success. We have been hearing so many amazing success stories from top educators, top community builders. And by the way, these two are no exception. These two are really super successful as well. But in this session, I've invited these two to come in so we can get really real. Because as we build our education and community businesses, the whole thing is not just all roses and champagne. Unfortunately, we go through these amazing roller coasters. We have these dreams and then things possibly don't go the way we want them to. We have to change our plans. We have to stay connected, just as I was saying, to the right community, make sure we're getting the right learning. So we're going to deep dive into two stories of two super awesome entrepreneurs I'm going to be introducing you to. So have we got Trey and Sandi with us now?
Hello there.
Hi, Trey. How's it going?
Amazing.
Hi, Michelle. Hi, Trey.
Hi, Sandi. How you doing?
Doing great. It's a little early, but doing great.
I know it's a little early for you guys. It's getting a little bit late here, but it's a little bit early for you guys. So let me just give a little bit of an introduction here. Sandi is one of our faculty members. You've been partnering with us now for several years, Sandi. I think we first met in, was it 2011 or something we first met?
2015. I've met Roger in 2005, but it was 2015 when I made my first trip to Bali and became a performance consultant.
And came out and did the performance consultant training. So Sandi's built her own content and products. First of all, you were working, specializing in helping to educate teachers, actually, and young kids as well. And then you've been helping like teachers to really learn how to be more inspirational, to really care about like the way that they're teaching and helping our young people to learn. And actually today you've joined us as one of the partners, and now you're going out and supporting all educators. So you're helping all educators to really grow their businesses, to inspire and to really understand the mindset, like the important part. So we're going to get into this a little bit later as well. When I first met Trey, I think we first met in Bali as well, Trey. I'm pretty sure we shared, when I say it wasn't all champagne and roses, we were sharing some champagne, or at least I was, because I think you weren't drinking. But we met in Bali. I think you came out to the partner conference.
Yeah, 2018.
2018. Oh, right, cool. And I know when I met you, you were just kind of finishing up like a previous career. You were in between trying to figure out what you were going to do next. We had some conversations and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But today you're like one of our top master trainers in wealth dynamics around the world, like delivering our content really, really powerfully. You've grown an enormous community around the whole of North and South America. So we've been talking over the last 2 days about this idea of like choosing, are you going to specialize in community? Are you going to specialize in faculty? And knowing that the two of them sometimes overlap. And of course, you know, even as a faculty member, you still need to be building a community, but knowing that if you're focusing at doing one over the other, you can go partner with the other person. So if you are a community builder, you can partner with faculty. If you're a faculty, you can partner with community. So I want to get into these stories and just kind of like really understand how you guys like followed this story. What were some of the learnings? And we can hear from everyone in the chat as well. And like I said, if you've got any questions, do drop them into the chat box. So Sandi, I'm going to come over and start with you first of all. You actually first started out at Zappos, didn't you? You were working with Tony Hsieh at the time. What was it that like even inspired you to come away from what you were doing and start supporting educators?
So I was actually working with Tony's other company called Delivering Happiness, and it was based on his best-selling book. And we were teaching companies how to use happiness as a business model similar to Zappos. And I was running internal culture and internal operations, and schools started getting a hold of the book and reaching out and saying, hey, we want to be happy like Zappos too. Can you teach us? So I started volunteering my time, co-writing curriculum, working with school leaders and helping them create the core values within the school. And I remember walking out of a school one day, it was a high school that I was working with, and I looked at the other person that was volunteering with me and I said, I never want to do anything else. Like, educators are the most amazing group of humans on the planet. And yet there's this gap between the value that we place on those who teach others things and the professional development that there is for them in the world. So really being able to, I created my whole business, Educator Dynamics, around creating positive, comprehensive, sustainable school cultures. And it evolved and grew into, when I joined the Genius Group in 2015, it was the missing piece from my background in organizational and relationship systems coaching, as well as my background in positive psychology and neuroscience research and all those pieces, really bringing in all of the strategic pieces that Roger brings to the table, as well as bringing in talent dynamics. And I remember becoming a performance consultant and looking at talent dynamics and going, okay, I can make this work. Like this fits. I can translate this into the world of traditional education. And now to see this evolution, it's brilliant.
That's so cool. And like, but hearing that story, it does sound like it was champagne and roses. Right. And this is, and it must be so difficult for the educators going, well, you know, why am I finding it so difficult? Like, how have these guys found what they want to do? And then their whole business just grows. And now they've got a global, you know, superstar business. So let's break this down. Like when you first kind of created that dream, did it all go the way that you wanted it to?
No. Let's start with moment one. So I was working, Jen Lim is the CEO of Delivering Happiness, and she co-wrote Delivering Happiness with Tony. And so we're trucking right along, building Delivering Happiness. We're a startup on steroids with the world telling us all the things that they need and want in terms of happiness. And so we've got shiny object syndrome. We're doing a lot of different things. We've got a clothing line. We're doing all of this. And running operations, I was, you know, Jen's right hand, and then her brother was running the at work team. And so between the three of us, we were rowing this boat and get to this place where we, where I said, I need to do this work with educators. I need, like, we've got to branch into schools. And I said, I know our budget, I know everything. I'm going to do this without a salary. I'm going to make it work. And she's like, okay, if you're going to figure it out, like, go ahead. And so I stepped down from my salary, making about, you know, close to 6 figures, and was like, I'm going to do this leap of faith. I'm going to jump into the deep end. I don't recommend that, by the way.
No.
So I'm going to tell you the things that
I did the same thing, by the way, but I still don't recommend it.
No, don't do that. And so fast forward 4 months later, her brother then steps down from the at work team. So now she's got all of these things going on, and she says, Sandi, I need to streamline. Like, I've got to pick one pathway, and I can't have anything else on my radar. But go, like you're passionate about it. So she and Tony both pushed me out the nest and said, Sandi, go build it. You're passionate about it. And I was like, okay, who do I want to be when I grow up? And I think I've said that to myself probably 10 times in my life, like who am I now? And I had 2 schools that were going to jump into this pilot program with me for $10,000 a year. And they had agreed, and we were getting ready to go to contract. And I was waiting on the Delivering Happiness attorneys to get me the contracts, and it wasn't happening. And so it was on a Friday that Jen said, hey, go build it, you know, but not with the DH brand, just go out on your own. And it was that following Tuesday that I was supposed to meet with these 2 principals to have them sign their contracts. And I called them both Monday morning and said, so change of plans. And one of them actually, he kept postponing our meeting and ended up calling me on Friday and said, so I reached out to Jen, and I had to make sure that you know, everything you're saying is true. And, you know, I'm like, of course, these are your kiddos. Like, I get it. So he's one of my biggest fans to this day. And we jumped in, and I remember getting that first check of $10,000, and I was like in business, and I was like, I don't care what I'm called. I just have to do this work. And I spent the greater part of 5 years doing that, and ending up in fetal position, crying, wondering how I'm going to pay rent more times than I could ever wish on anyone. Again, don't fall out the nest the way I did. It was really when in 2015, like the last 6 years has been so revolutionary for my life and my business and everything, because I finally surrendered and asked for help versus feeling like I can do it all on my own.
We're going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to the help in a minute. I think it's really interesting. You know, you left your corporate position. I did the same thing and started working as well with my own training business at the time. I couldn't even think of a name, so I called it Michelle Clark Limited. It's not very original. I know Trey actually did the same thing as well. Like, Trey had a super successful corporate business. And you know, I'm going to come back to you in a moment, Sandi, but Trey, do you want to just share, like, we're all actually saying this is not a good idea, but we all actually followed the same strategy.
Yeah, I was laughing as Sandi was talking about that. Not laughing at you, but with you. Because I did the same thing. You know, 2018, I had been now off and on for 13 years in one industry, and I was making multiple 6 figures, was traveling around the world. I had a very, you know, beautiful position, but then I discovered this community. I discovered Genius U, Wealth Dynamics, and the work that Roger created. And I realized that everything I was teaching was at best subpar. And I was like, oh, I got to teach this stuff instead. And I tried to not do it that way, but I was kind of put between a rock and a hard place, and I had to choose: do I want to go, build community and teach something that's going to change people's lives, or do I want a cushy job where I make a lot of money? And in my mind, as a creator, I thought, well, the new thing will make a lot of money too, so I'll just quit this thing and go do that, and I'll be in flow in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And so like Sandi, I ended up with some EFP, the entrepreneur fetal position. I'm sure many people watching this know what I'm talking about. And so that was definitely not all rainbows and butterflies or champagne, as you say.
Definitely not. We like that awful feeling when you kind of like go back what we call that kind of infrared, like red status, when you are basically spending more money than you're making, and you've got this passion and this dream, and you're like, why is it just not working? Why is the universe just not providing for me? And this whole thing, like, I had this big dream and I came with all my passion, but it's not enough to have your dream and have your passion. You have to have that big dream, because it's your dream that in moments of real challenge, in moments of difficulty, that keeps you pushing through and figuring it out. But it's not enough just to have that. You've got to have other things as well. So Sandi, let me come back. Like what would you say was your greatest learning about what you needed, other than passion and purpose and commitment and just grit? Like, what was your greatest learning?
There's 100, right? I think, and sometimes that's how we learn, right? We talk about, and we do this in the Genius Camps too, is failure is fun. And failure is one of those things where you learn, the 1,000 ways not to do things. But I think one of my greatest learnings was not getting stuck in the, I can figure it out, not getting stuck in that state of grit, right? Mm. And understanding that someone, and Roger says this all the time, and I've heard it what feels like a million years and a million times that he said it, and yet when you're ready to hear it, then he says it at the right time. Right. And it's about really just, someone else has done it before. You may be able to kick it up a notch, you may be able to edit it or pivot it or align it to what you're doing specifically, but more often than not, you're not the first person to do that thing, whatever it is. And a couple of years ago, I actually reached out on the financial front to a money coach. And I didn't know what a money coach was. I didn't know, like, financial advisors. It was like, well, I don't have any money to use a financial advisor, so what's that? And I remember Roger talking about measure your money, measure your money, measure your money. And I'm like, yeah. And, bookkeeping, whatever, the thing. And as a creator, it's not my strong suit, but it goes along with the asking for help. And once I surrendered and said, just show me, just teach me, and looking at that in all aspects of life and surrendering to that support, and that tribe around you, that trusted tribe that you can really lean on and feel safe and brave and vulnerable with. But that takes actually that act of vulnerability to go, I don't know everything, and I don't need to know everything, which is what the current system of education teaches us. If you, right, are not good at all 5 classes that you have per se, we have 4 A's and a D, what do we focus on? The D. And then and
the whole kind of figure it out for yourself mentality, like, that we learn at school, is like, you got to do this, you got to learn this and retain all this in your brain. Whereas, in the Genius U community, we're saying, let's go collaborate with everyone else. There's always somebody somewhere in the community that has the answer. Like, we always know there's somebody somewhere that can help us. Sandi, let's go back to when the crisis hit. I mean, your business was doing like what, $250,000 at that point. And I think I remember you saying to me that it dropped to like $10,000 or $15,000 like overnight. Do you want to just like walk through that experience and what you did at that point as well?
So I had, at that point, all of my schools were on a retainer contract for the school year. And I had one school that I was coaching virtually in Florida via Zoom for a couple of years. I fly out there a couple times a year, but the majority was via Zoom. But the rest of my schools were local in Las Vegas. And so I spent a lot of time in my car driving between school to school. And in one email, right before, the world shut down, they had stopped allowing out of district consultants, as I was called, into the buildings for safety's sake. And so in one email, one email to all the principals, but I got several text messages from my principals saying, Sorry, Sandi, we've got to cancel all workshops until further notice. So in one email, my business was gone, except for the school that I was already coaching virtually. But even they ended up having to pivot and restructure their time, that we had to postpone our workshops. So now I'm going another moment of, okay, now what do I want to be when I grow up? How do I do this? And I ended up, I'm a fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And so I took one of his walking meditations and just went for a walk. And it was an hour-long walking meditation. And I remember just so many times the waves of emotion of like, okay, Sandi, this isn't about you. Like, you have shelter, you've got your savings account, like you've got food, you're okay. Like, it was just all of these things, but yet I couldn't help but feel the immense grief of all of these educators and all the students and everything. And
yeah.
That's this place where I remember what Roger talks about all the time is where are you delivering value? And so I reached out to all my principals and I said, I'm not going to charge you for any of this, but once a week, let's jump on and I'm going to support you, whatever you need.
I remember you actually having that conversation with Roger on one of the Crystal Circle calls and talking about that and saying, well, I'm just going to surrender and go do this for free and see what happens. Like, when you did that, like, what was the reaction and then what happened?
Yeah, so the principals just, you could feel them, you can feel the energy even in a virtual room. And I just felt them like, just relax. And they're like, okay, Sandi's got us, because so much of what coach is on mindset and consciousness and who you're showing up as and owning that and everything when it comes to human behavior and the consciousness evolution of who we are and through the Wealth Lighthouse. And so really just holding that safe space for them to show up authentically and to go, we don't know what the truck is going on, right? and Sandi, like, how do we keep our staff together? How do we, and I remember going, okay, let's figure it out.
And when you got with them, like what has been the transformation now to today? Like, where's your business at? Like, having gone through that real pain, but offering that value, where are you at now today?
Yeah, I recouped 95% of my revenue in that school year. I was able to realize all the money from the purchase orders. And now I've got my team rowing now. I've got a full team now. Amazing.
That's so cool. And now we're partnering together now because now you've realized that actually educators are educators. They're not all just teachers, right? Like, there's a whole raft of educators that we're working with. And I said to you, I'd love you to come and roll out what you've been doing and put a micro school together with us and actually go help our educators. So we're now working on that as well, which I'm super, super excited about. I'm going to come back to you at the end as well, Sandi. So thanks for just sharing that. Trey, I want to come over to you now. Because this is a really interesting story as well. Like, when we met and you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do, you actually first of all tried to kind of get the product business started, and then you were like, this isn't working, and then you went to like build a community, and it kind of almost happened sort of by accident, but all of a sudden you realized that you had this amazing ability to connect community of conscious entrepreneurs. Do you want to just share like kind of how that sort of accidental story happened despite your desire to do something different?
Yeah, so it's funny, earlier when you were asking Sandi, like, what are the other things besides, the rainbows and unicorns? And I was immediately thinking ego death. Like, sometimes you just have an idea in your mind of what things are supposed to look like. And so you resist what you need to do until you have to. And that's what happened, right?
Makes you.
Yeah, exactly. So there actually maybe is a little bit of value in burning your boats, because once you realize you can't go back, the only way through is forward. And so that's where, I found myself was, what I'd been doing in that corporate career was actually traveling around the world, teaching workshops, teaching people how to do things. And so I was like, I want to teach wealth dynamics. And so I tried to go do that first, and I would go into my community and I'd be like, hey, take this test. And my friends would be like, I'm not going to pay $100 to take a test. I'm like, it's $100 and change your life like 1,000 times over. Just take the stupid test. And I was getting so much resistance from so many people, and I'm watching my bank account go down because I quit the job, and I try to go back and they're like, no, you quit. And I'm like, okay, this sucks. And so I had to find a way through. And it was actually, I can't remember, a conversation with Roger or somewhere in there where someone was like, just go do what we know works. As Sandi said earlier, there's already people that have done stuff before. There's these vibrant communities that are meeting at these entrepreneur socials in London. You should just do that in Austin. Right. And so I found the closest supporter to me, who was sleeping next to me. So I grabbed my wife and I was like, I need your help. So my wife, Grace, actually was the critical component here. a creator supporter duo. And we started by creating these socials that we would host in Austin every month. Now, that wasn't going to make us money. So what we ended up doing was actually partnering and having Roger fly into Austin. We put on our first event. We had hundreds of people there, generated 6 figures of revenue, and we were off to the races. And after that, it was, we got up to the point where we were doing, like, right before COVID, 6 to 7 events per quarter between having Roger come in.
Yeah, just before we get to that stage, because there was another step that even happened. So you set up the Austin community, and you called it the Austin Conscious Entrepreneurs.
Austin Conscious Entrepreneurs, yeah, ACE.
For sure. But so many people were like, well, we want to be in the Conscious Entrepreneurs community. Why are you restricting it to Austin? And you were like, okay. And all of a sudden it became the Conscious Entrepreneurs community, and people from all over North and South America were joining. And that's when we said, well, look, you're clearly like creating all this attraction now. Would you partner with us? And, we'll run some events in North and South America. And you were filling events all the time. You were bringing partners left, right, and center. And I mean, that business was like a multi-million-dollar business at that point, right?
Yeah, I got up to a little over, like, almost $2.5 million. That was before COVID. But yeah, we were all over in several different cities. Actually, different city leaders that started popping up as well, who wanted to just kind of learn from what we had done and copy what we'd done for their communities. And so, yeah, the Austin Conscious Entrepreneurs became the Alliance of Conscious Entrepreneurs, so we could keep the ACE acronym.
And as you were like growing this community, which you kind of accidentally formed, but then all of a sudden started strategically to really grow, like what were the biggest challenges that showed up for you in building that community?
I think at the beginning, the biggest challenge was just figuring out a way to monetize it. Originally it was just kind of putting on these socials and getting people to take tests and things like that. And, I'd make $700 and spend $500. And I was like, this isn't working. But the turning point was when I realized, that a lot of these other people that want to build communities, they're in the same boat, and they wanted to bring people together, and they wanted to expose people to wealth dynamics. And so I actually started offering to those communities to actually do Zoom calls and teach the whole thing, which really was great for me, because that's what I originally wanted to do anyway, which was teach this stuff. But I found that I had to build the community first, because if there was no one to listen, then there was no one to speak to. And so it was really discovering, I guess, my own voice in the whole thing, but then also seeing how I could add value, not just by bringing community for having Roger come in, but bringing value and content in smaller containers that Roger wouldn't be able to show up for, a small Zoom room with 150 people or something. Yeah.
That was so cool. And as a result, you were building all these city leaders and city hosts all around America who were all growing their own communities, which was building into the larger community and all becoming part of the Alliance of Conscious Entrepreneurs as well. And then COVID came, of course. So you had this really great groove going on with these regular events every quarter. We flew Roger over to America. It all stopped overnight. And I remember at that time, we were like, okay, well, what can we do next, Trey? We were trying to figure out our own groove, having canceled the events. You tried a couple of things. It didn't feel super smooth. It wasn't working. And it wasn't in flow. Like what happened then? How did you kind of refine your groove and find your flow after that real dip?
Yeah. So COVID was scary. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 13. So it wasn't my first time to run into something happening. 2008 was pretty rough. My dad passing in 2011 was pretty rough. And those things killed my businesses. But this was the first time that I had a wipeout and, fell to infrared overnight. But this time I had a plan. I had a map. I could actually go back to the pre-flight checklist and say, okay, where am I at? So without missing a beat, I went and measured my money. It's like the first thing I always do, right? Because it's the first step to get out of infrared. And we figured out where our runway was, how much time we had. And we're like, we just got to go figure some stuff out. So like you said, we tried a few things at first, tried to switch to virtual environments for workshops, which took us 3 or 4 times before we finally figured it out. But I realized that all of the credibility that I had built up being a community leader and teaching wealth dynamics and so many times had inspired people to actually reach out to me and want help getting through the crisis. And so for the first time, I actually became a coach. Like I said, you see the way you want it to be, and then your ego has to show up in different ways. So I just wanted to teach. I ended up becoming a community builder. I just wanted to teach. I ended up becoming a coach. And so now I'm doing both of those things. And whereas I used to fly or have Roger come into my events to teach my community stuff, now other people who have their own communities have me come in to teach it to theirs so they can grow theirs and create cohesion.
So I remember you just said to me, Michelle, I just got to go figure this thing out. Give me some space and some time. I'll come back. I'll be back. And I said, okay. And, we were busy doing our own thing at the time as well. And then I remember you and Grace reached out and you said, right, we figured it out. Like, we've made this thing work, you know, because I've built this really amazing community. Like, I'm now running these workshops. I figured out the process. I'm doing wealth dynamics. I'm teaching. I'm running these workshops. I get people showing up. Then they want to do more with me. Then they want to buy more programs. And you said, now we're ready to make this whole thing go global. And I had the challenge at that time. I was like, I've only really got Roger, like, that I can get doing the wealth dynamics training, right? That I can actually put on a webinar and do that. And you were like, actually, you got me, I'm here. And so this was a great partnership where I said, well, I've got this community here that's just desperate, needing this training. And so you stepped up to be the master trainer for us. And now you're delivering workshops for us, like, what, every week, I think, at the moment?
Like at 5, 6 per quarter at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you want to just share, like, what it is that you're doing on the workshops?
Yeah, sure. So basically what I realized is there's a lot of gold on Genius U, and there's a lot of things that we can learn through Wealth Dynamics, but having bought pretty much every certification program training that you guys offer, there were all these gold nuggets that, if put in just the right order, you could in half a day learn everything you needed to know to go take some action. And so really it's about compressing Wealth Dynamics, team building, wealth spectrum, understanding how all of that really sets you up to know who you are, where you are, so that you're taking the right steps. Because we know in Wealth Dynamics, if you're following the wrong people, if you're listening to, podcasts or reading books of people who are different profiles, then there's a 7 out of 8 chance you're reading or listening to the wrong person. What we don't realize is that wrongness compounds when you don't know what level you're at. Because if you do the right thing at the wrong time, it's still the wrong thing. And so what we're doing is really helping people understand who they are and where they are, right? And getting real about the where, because you can move so much faster if you just humble up at the beginning. You don't have to go through the ego deaths, so that you can actually get onto the right path. And so we've created a workshop for that, and then a much more elaborate 4-week version of it for people who are actually in business already.
It's so cool that kind of like this whole story of like these different roundabouts that we go through to get to the place that we want to get to. And here you are today now with all this expertise, all this knowledge, with this great position where the community members all around the world can now connect with you and ask you to come and train with their community, because you've got all the content and you're the person who's in that position as well. So I think it's a super cool story. I love how, like, each of you have gone through these different ways of these different kind of paradigms of learning. Roger talks about we're either earning or we're learning, right? He says this all the time, we're either earning or we're learning. And this is so true. Like, each week or each day, you're either earning something or you're creating a learning. And I'd love to just finish on like, for somebody who's listening now and going, okay, so, it's not just me that's like trying to figure this all out on my own. I realize that other people have been through this journey too. What would you love to share with the educators, the community builders, as your kind of final piece of advice as we wrap this session up for them for the next 12 months, as they're like kind of trying to figure this all out on their own, like who they should be connected with and what they should be doing? And Sandi, let me come over to you first.
I think what I'd love for people to hear and understand is that there is so much power in the evolution of your own consciousness. And when we look inward, and as Trey referenced, our ego death, right? There's so many layers to that of surrender, of wisdom, of insight, of lots of it, right? And so I created the evolution of consciousness that really mirrors the Wealth Lighthouse. It connects into Maslow's hierarchy, and it helping you just evolve through and understand that each layer has a nugget to teach you, and not skipping steps, right? Is just to surrender to that process, to see the map, to see who's gone before you, and to really reach out for that trusted tribe that you can really circle up with and connect with, and know that you're not alone.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being part of our trusted tribe, because you being here makes it all the more better. So that's awesome. Thank you, Sandi. And Trey, same question to you.
Yeah. So, those of you who want to build communities or already have communities, the key to community, not just building it or, monetizing it, is actually to love your community. Roger says all the time that you have to fall in love with your customer, not your product. And that really is the key. And it's the reason why I've had so many people who have their own vibrant communities with hundreds or even thousands of customers that'll want me to come in and teach not their product, but Wealth Dynamics, because now their communities speak the same language, they're working together more. And so even though it wasn't that person's product, they loved their community enough to say, hey, I want to bring other people in. I want to bring value to them. And so I want to encourage you to think of your community not as your customers, but as all of the people who choose to spend their time with you. whether they've paid you yet or not, and look for ways where you can be adding value into their life. And if you start from a place of, I love my community, right, then that's really going to be a super easy thing for you to do.
I love that. And we love the fact that you choose to be part of our community as well, and that you love all of our community members enough to help them with all of your knowledge. Thank you to both of you for sharing that kind of warts and all story of what has happened. I know many people watching now are going, it's okay, it's not just me, but also for just sharing the importance of like staying connected, being with that community and being with that tribe, those people who are constantly learning, those people who are like out there to help you, to support you, to give you the mentoring.